everyone, I'm Cyndi Harder and this is The Beat Presents. Today we'll be hearing from a video game inspired composer, Max Coburn. Let's check him out. Hey everyone, we're here with composer Max Coburn.
Thanks for coming on the show, Max.
Of course, thanks for having me.
So, tell us a little bit about some of the stuff you're working on right now.
Well, I'm working on a campus-wide project where I'm scoring individual locations across the campus. I'm trying to include as many paths and roads as possible, but I'll probably do that in a way which would allow room for variation upon themes. So, ideally, you'd be walking around the campus. Maybe you're starting in Fort Awesome, going to the New. You would have your Fort Awesome background music playing. You'd walk along a path. The music would switch with you. Whether you do that yourself or it does it automatically is still under question. But as you walk, you'd probably hit up the mall. You'd go through various buildings. The music would shift with you.
Cool.
So would you do that as having like a playlist that would go from one track to the next as you go in different spots?
Yeah, I'm thinking of having that be a certain way I could implement it. I had the idea that I could work on developing an app that would work with GPS, but I've heard that it's a little hard to work with such precision in such a small space as a college campus. So I might honestly work with the honor system, hope people switch it when they're supposed to.
Yeah.
That might be the best I can do with the certain space I have.
Cool. And then you're also working on your senior recital coming up, right?
Yeah.
And what are you doing for that?
I'm just going to have... It's going to be me and a laptop like I've been doing shows recently. And I'm going to have my friend Chris Krasnow be playing some guitar and trombone. I might have a couple friends work on some projections to have during it. But it should be a good time. It's probably going to be mostly electronic. I might switch instruments here and there, but I haven't decided yet.
Cool.
So, have you been doing electronic your whole kind of music career, or did you start off doing more live instruments?
Well, when I started off, I was playing in a few bands at the time, and I was at least contributing the composition for some of that. I never really went full on and did too many arrangements for the band myself, but it would be more of a collaborative spirit with a few of my friends.
And when did you start?
I started writing music when I was about in 7th or 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And since I've gotten access to a computer and a program I can use, it's been a lot more easy to, crank the tunes out.
Yeah. Now, when you make music, what software do you use? What kind of stuff do you do?
I use Logic Pro right now. It's Logic Pro 8, so it doesn't have any of the crazy features that Logic 9 has. But I pretty much just use a MIDI keyboard going straight into my computer, USB to USB, and do part by part. I do all the drums in the keyboard. I do most of the instruments in the keyboard. I've more recently been using live instruments. Have an M-Box, I plug in a guitar to it, a bass, or whatever, and try to do things that way too.
Do you normally write in the studio on the computer, or do you find, you either write on a guitar or on a piano and then translate it and arrange it?
I usually write on the computer. I spend most of my time writing in my room, just in front of my computer. It's kind of hermity of me, but I find I get the best work done that way.
Cool. And you do a lot of your music is like video game inspired type of thing. What kind of got you into doing that?
Well, ever since I was little, I grew up watching my cousin play a lot of video games before I actually had video games myself. He gave me his old Game Boy when I was somewhere in grade school, and ever since then I've just been a super avid video game player. So the music in those video games was really what kind of drove me to that style. When my dad was having me as a little kid around the house, he used to play a lot of progressive rock and jazz fusion, and I think listening to a lot of that growing up really got me into the mindset I have now about like what should I do with this chord here, these are the kind of aesthetics I'm going to use because that's what I listened to growing up. And the video game music aesthetic really contributed to that, and I feel like I just wanted to make them work hand in hand and be able to write the kind of music I wanted to hear.
Right. Yeah, I think it's interesting that you could definitely hear the kind of prog rock and fusion elements in your music with a lot of changing meter and that kind of stuff, but it's still very much the 8-bit style, and what do you think? Obviously music in video games now doesn't particularly use that style very often. So what kind of what do you see this leading to, or why 8-bit music?
Well, the thing with that is I feel like 8-bit is a very pigeonholed term, and that while I do write a lot of music in the style of chiptunes and 8-bit music, it's kind of an aesthetic that lends itself well to other styles rather than having its own style in and of itself. So I feel like by writing music that's influenced by video games, I'm kind of just saying I write music in all these different styles and kind of adapt to an aesthetic rather than certainly contributing to the 8-bit realm of performance. I have a lot of friends who do chiptune music on Game Boys and do a lot of live stuff, and that's awesome, and I'm so proud of them, some of them. I knew Anamanaguchi a little bit back before they got huge and extremely successful, and they're all great dudes, and they all make great music. And I also had friends with the people who are now in Infinity Shred, who used to be Starscream, and they're a bunch of great guys too. And they do music more in the style of, here, I kind of want to be this kind of band, but have chiptune elements incorporated in it.
So what exactly is chiptune for somebody who doesn't know as much about the video game music world?
It's kind of a hard thing to describe, and there's a lot of dispute over this, but it's really just music that incorporates this certain chip that used to be used in old school video game systems that made the music sound as lo-fi and bleepy as it did.
Yeah.
Okay.
And while I'm using a DAW, a digital audio workstation like Logic, I'm not really making authentic chiptune music.
Right.
But I'm more just alluding to the style and trying to like write to make my music sound like video game music. Your comment about modern video game music kind of taking its own path with that sounding more like film scoring.
Right.
A lot of video games are going in that direction, but I feel in the indie game market there are a lot of writers and a lot of programmers who are trying to bring back the old school appeal of video games. And I think there's a good market for the kind of music I'm working in.
Are there specific composers or specific video games that really you think were a big influence to what you do now?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of thinking about that. growing up, one of my favorite games was Pokemon.
Right.
I still play Pokemon. I think it's a great series. The music in those games continues to get better and better, which is actually unusual. Usually if a franchise goes for long enough, it starts to kind of get itself into a rut. The music starts to sound very much similar to the last game that came out. But I feel like the music in Pokemon games has just been getting better and better. I think the first time I played Sonic, some of that music really held on to me. And then from there, once I got a computer and started figuring out how to discover this stuff on my own, I actually started learning about the soundtracks before actually playing the games for some things.
How do you find that you're able to kind of keep things with your music becoming new and not falling into that repetitive pattern?
Well, I do worry about that a lot. I feel like sometimes when I'm writing, I find myself falling into a pattern, and I don't necessarily think that's the best way to go. But I think generally if I can get myself out of working within a certain style, like the campus project, which is being made in a very similar style from track to track, if I can take a break from that and come back to it, having had different experiences and writing in different scenarios, I feel like I can move on from that and just keep myself with like fresh ideas and not repeating myself necessarily.
And then you're going to play kind of an interesting mashup for us today.
Yeah.
What are you going to be playing?
Well, 2 summers ago I got into anime big. I had a summer where I didn't have a job, and you know where it goes from there.
Right.
Just sit in my room. I watched through all of Dragon Ball, and I watched through at least part of a series I've just recently discovered called Fist of the North Star. So what I'm going to be playing is a medley of the original Dragon Ball theme and the original Fist of the North Star theme.
Awesome. Well, let's check it out. So tell me a little bit more about your Level Music project.
Well, I've been working on this project since my sophomore year, and pretty much what I decided to do was I got my hands on a few of these things called sound fonts that my friend made, and what they are essentially banks of instruments that are originated from Super Nintendo games. And over the years, that games from that general era in the mid-90s for Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis had some of the best music I've heard throughout any video games. So I wanted to take those sounds and write music with them myself. So I figured a good way to do that was to have a series of short releases, 5 tracks each, where I'd write looping music for a video game that doesn't really exist. At this point, I'm working on a series of all the letters in the alphabet, and in the years past I worked on 1 through 9, so I did Level Music 1 followed by Level Music 2 all the way up through 9. I took about a year off, gave myself some more room to think about it and to come into it with new ideas rather than just kind of immediately going head on into it, which probably wouldn't have been the best idea. And now I'm working on the letters. Instead of releasing them one at a time like I did with the numbers, I'm releasing them 2 at a time and both sides of the alphabet. So I released A and N together, then B and O, and then C and P. The next up would be D and Q, but I'm spending a lot of time working on the Level Music project.
Each of these letters is composed of 5 tracks? Okay, and then you'll release the 2 at once?
Yeah.
Cool.
So we can expect to hear more of that soon, hopefully?
Hopefully in the summer, once I have the Purchase project finished, I can devote a lot more time to working on that again.
And then, outside of the Level Music stuff, are there any other kind of plans, or where do you want to go artistically from here?
Well, I'm thinking I want to develop some kind of career in writing music for video games, commercials, movies, anything. I'd just love writing music for something else. I'm actually involved in a continuing collaboration with my friend Christina Liu. She's a senior at Parsons right now, and she is working on her animation thesis. So I just recently finished scoring that project of hers.
Cool.
And she's a really great artist. She actually is known best now for doing art for the Azealia Banks album covers.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So she's very talented and very accomplished so far. So I'm really excited to be working with her.
Great.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for stopping by and
Thanks for
talking to us. You're going to play one more song. What are we going to hear from you?
The song is called Snowed In. I released this in 2010, and it's been one of my favorites to play live.
Cool. Here's one more by Max Coburn called Snowed In.